Ice Age Europe, roughly 100,000 years ago. A hunter, motionless in the wet grass. Finally, the animal stands right. He lifts the spear, thrusts, and on impact, the stone tip breaks loose from the shaft and drops into the leaves. The animal bolts, gone. Look at what he is holding. A sharpened stone that cuts better than any claw in the world. A shaft that makes his arm 3 times as long. Both of them excellent. Both of them nearly useless because they will not stay together. That is the problem of this episode. Nothing is missing here. What's missing is something that connects the two. Before we go looking for a solution, let's look at what there is to solve it with. This is the technology tree of humankind. Every invention is a node. Every node grew out of what came before it. We are building it one episode at a time, and what you see in this video goes onto the website while we speak. That's the real page, filling in live. Right now, the website is not online and that tree is close to empty. It has exactly one node. Fire. Episode 1. Fire was the first technology that doesn't just use a material, but transforms it. And that is the entire toolkit. One controlled fire, sharpened stone, wood, sinew, whatever the forest and the ground happened to offer. No metal, no pottery, no rope you could trade for. Everything that follows has to be built out of exactly this. So, 3 questions. The first one is practical. How do you join stone and wood so firmly that the joint survives the impact? The second is the one we will ask in every single episode, because the whole tree is built on it. Which pieces were already standing? And what had to be added or newly combined to get from the problem to the solution? That question sounds like bookkeeping. It isn't. It's the one that will surprise you at the end. And the third, what does the answer reveal about the minds that found it? One more thing before we start. The problem itself earns a node. Because joining 2 things into one is not a trick. It is a technology in its own right, and everything from the spear to the aircraft wing depends on it. Watch what that node does to the tree. It doesn't hang under fire. It stands on its own, unconnected, waiting. An open problem written into the map. Where do you get glue when there is no shop? The obvious route. Take whatever is already sticky. And nature is remarkably generous. Tree resin. Score the bark of a pine and the tree bleeds sticky resin. Collect it, warm it gently, press it on. Done. The oldest chemically identified hafting glue in the world is exactly that. A tree resin from the Middle Stone Age in Africa. Only pure resin has a catch. It's brittle. In the cold, it goes glassy and cracks. In the heat, it softens and gives way. In comparative tests, pure pine resin fails noticeably more often than the alternatives. Bitumen. In some places, black natural asphalt seeps up out of the ground. Earth pitch, sticky as it comes. At the site of el Tallel in Syria, researchers found black bitumen residue on 2 out of 3 stone tools they examined. Neanderthals brought the material in from a source some 40 kilometers away. 40 kilometers. Somebody knew where the stuff was and went and got it. That is logistics in the Ice Age. 2 solutions, 2 new nodes. And both of them work. This isn't a story of failure. A Neanderthal with bitumen on his spear was a well-equipped hunter. But now look at the tree and look at it carefully. 3 nodes and a pattern. Resin and bitumen are both found glues. Someone picks them up and uses them as they are. And that means both of them share exactly the same weakness. They are tied to a place. The resin tree, the asphalt seep. If it isn't there, the glue isn't there. So there's our answer to the first small question. You get glue out of the ground or out of a tree, as long as you happen to be standing in the right spot, which is the moment the toolkit runs out. Everything we had at the start of this episode has now been used. Stone, wood, sinew, whatever the ground offers, all of it is on the table and it gets you a glue that only works in some places. And that is where our second question stops being bookkeeping, because from here nothing new can be found. Something has to be combined. Take a piece of birch bark. This pale, papery bark is not sticky. There's no resin in it you could squeeze out. There is simply no glue inside a birch. Now take the one node we've had since episode 1. Fire. Not to burn the bark. Not for warmth. Not for cooking. Those are the things fire was already for. Instead, seal the bark off from the air and heat it to several hundred degrees, and the white bark sweats out a black, viscous tar, a substance that had never existed anywhere in the world before. That is birch tar. As far as we know, the first synthetic material humankind ever made. The first material a human being did not find but manufactured. Now watch what happens in the tree, because this node is different from every node before it. 2 edges grow into it, Joining, from one side, the problem, fire from the other, the means. Both strands run into the same point, and there is the answer to our recurring question. Nothing had to be brought in from outside. The fire was already there. The bark was already there. What was new was the aim. And out of those known pieces came something that had never existed anywhere on Earth. That is the invention. Not a new ingredient, a new result. Rarely a thing out of nowhere. Far more often, known pieces aimed at each other for the first time, and something unprecedented falls out. And who did this? Not us, the Neanderthals. At the Italian site of Campitello, birch tar is stuck to stone tools that are around 200,000 years old. That is long before our species ever set foot in Europe. Look at the timeline. The oldest node in this episode is the most advanced one. That's not a glitch in the tree. That's the finding. But how does anyone even arrive at an idea like that? Nothing about pale, papery bark suggests a black tar is sleeping inside it. The most likely answer is an accident, but one you have to be sharp enough to notice. Spend half your life at a fire, and sooner or later you see it. Birch bark smoldering next to hot stones leaves a dark, sticky film behind on the stone. A team led by Patrick Schmidt reconstructed exactly that in 2019. Burn bark against a smooth stone, the smoke condenses as tar, scrape it off. Done. But it didn't stop there. At the German site of Königsaue, everything points to a far more elaborate process. Bark underground, sealed from air in several controlled steps. Considerably more tar, and considerably more skill. Two routes side by side. In all likelihood, one is the beginning and the other is the mastery. The same idea sharpened over generations. And that answers our third question. Anyone who turns a fleeting observation into a repeatable process, improves it step by step, waits for the right moment, and passes the knowledge to their children. That person plans ahead. That person abstracts. These are not dull primitives. These are people who, at the core, thought the way you and I think. So what does this one node switch on? A great deal, because glue is an enabling technology. With reliable adhesive, hafting becomes safe. Spears that hold on impact, axes with a firm handle. Later the arrow, which only works at all when point and fletching sit rock solid. Tools get repaired instead of thrown away. Vessels get sealed, seams closed, boats kept dry. And birch tar does more. It's thermoplastic. Warm it and it softens again, so the same piece of glue can be used over and over. It's waterproof. It resists fungus and weather. And a very recent discovery, it's antibacterial. Fresh birch tar inhibits dangerous germs like Staphylococcus aureus. It's entirely possible Neanderthals used their glue as a wound salve long before any medicine. A human being manufactures a substance nature doesn't know, tunes its properties, and uses it for a dozen different purposes. That is the beginning of materials engineering. That is the beginning of chemistry. One more thing, and it's the best part. The tree doesn't care about borders, but the answers do. The same task, joining two things, gets solved differently everywhere on Earth, shaped by whatever grows and seeps there. Ice Age Europe, the realm of the birch. Here, the Neanderthals cook their tar and hand the process down across tens of thousands of years. The Near East, no birch forest, but the ground gives up black asphalt. So people reach for bitumen, collect it, press it on, done. Southern Africa. Here, among our own species, the recipe. Plant gum, red ochre, and fat, deliberately mixed into a compound adhesive. And the ochre isn't decoration. It makes the mass easier to shape and quicker to dry. Australia. Aboriginal peoples use resinous spinifex grass. They thresh it until the resin granules fall out, then heat them until they fuse into a black, moldable tar, and set sharp stone blades into wood with it. An independent invention, and the same idea as birch tar. Heat turns plant into glue. And much later, a completely different adhesive joins them. Animal glue. From hide, sinew, and bone, settled people boil collagen into something extremely strong. At Nahal Hemar in Israel, they coat baskets and vessels with it over 8,000 years ago, closing the weave, stiffening the seams. Enormously strong. But it softens in water, so it only ever works under a roof, never out in the rain like the old pitch of the Ice Age. The same necessity. 5 completely different answers. Let's look at what has come into being in the last 13 minutes. We started with one node and a hunter whose spear fell apart. Now there are 5. Joining. The problem. Resin glue and bitumen, the two found answers. And birch tar, the child of fire and joining, the first substance humankind ever made itself. And all three of our questions are answered. Stone and wood were joined with something that had to be created first. Nothing new had to be invented to do it. The fire was already there. The bark was already there. What was new was pointing one at the other. And a mind that can do that, refine it and teach it, is a mind that plans and abstracts. Behind faces that looked nothing like ours were people who thought like us. And this glue never stops. Look around you. Almost everything surrounding you is glued. The furniture, the plywood, the layers in your shoes, the screen you are looking at, the aircraft in the sky. Half the modern world is a composite material, and it begins with a Neanderthal cooking bark until something black dripped out. 4 nodes in one episode, a few thousand to go. Which brings the next question. What happens when a human being puts not bark, but earth into the fire? That's the next node. See you then.